Good morning and welcome to today's video from Yoker Evangelical Church. Today it's Friday, the 20th of November, and in our Bible reading plan this morning we read 1 Chronicles chapter 15 and James chapter 2. Today I want to take a look at James 2. But first, as a Christian, do you ever get the feeling like there are two sides to your brain and they are in competition? There are two voices that you hear. There is the side of you, the voice that wants to obey God, the side that knows what is right and knows what would be good to do. And yet there is also the side that wants to satisfy myself. There is the side that wants to continue doing the things that I want to do rather than what God wants me to do. I want to take a look at James chapter 2 this morning because it helps us to see how we are free to obey God. This situation with the two voices, the two sides of our brain, can make us feel trapped and uncertain. But James chapter 2 is a breath of assurance that we are actually just set free to obey God. So the situation, as we find in James 2, James asks us to imagine that at one of our meetings at church, a rich man and a poor man both come to the door. A man who is dressed in fine clothes, who is obviously well-to-do and respectable, and a man who is dressed in rags, a man who looks like he is nothing. And James challenges us, as readers, how would you treat both of these men? Would you give the rich man the best seat in the house? Would you introduce him to everybody, sit him down in the nicest place, bring him tea and coffee? And then how would you treat the poor man? Would you tell him to sit in the corner, not make eye contact, and hope he goes away quickly? We can see there, can't we, the two voices. There is the voice of Jesus that we know we should listen to. Jesus who tells us to love our neighbours all the same. That voice that says you should treat these men exactly alike. But then there is the voice that wants to have our favourites. That says, I want to treat the rich man better because I want him to be associated with me. We are all prone to have our favourites in this way, to sometimes forget the teachings of Jesus and instead do the things that we want. But James warns us clearly that if we do this, we are in danger ourselves. We are in danger, as he says in verse 4, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? We're in danger of, if we do this, setting ourselves up as the judge in place of God. We're in danger of ignoring him, actually replacing him as making ourselves the king. James warns us even that if we do this, we might end up ignoring God's chosen people. And so what is the antidote? How do we, in those situations where one voice says one thing, one voice says another, how do we listen to God? How do we obey him? Well, I think the answer is in verse 12. And just listen to these words that James writes. Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. In that, James simply asks us to remember the gospel. He asks us to remember that Jesus Christ came to earth to die for our sin, also that we might be set free. And so we can remember that we ourselves are not judged by a law that condemns, but judged by a law that gives freedom. Now, what does he mean by that? That might be confusing to us. It means that we are free to act without fear of failure. One of the things that might hold us back from obeying God is the fear that we won't obey him properly. The fear that we'll make a mistake and that we won't do it right. But James reminds us, you are not bound by the law. Jesus has already satisfied the law on your behalf. Therefore, you are free and forgiven. And so you can obey the law of God. I think the challenge from this passage is the next time that we are in a situation where one half of us wants to do one thing, obey God, and the other half wants to satisfy ourselves. How do we follow that path that obeys God? It is that we remember the gospel. We remember that we are under a law that gives freedom. I hope you have a great day today, and God bless.